Troglodyte warning. Today I have an interview with Andrew Gold, Grifter-in-Chief, with the OG grifter, Katie Hopkins, a person that 10 years ago was just considered a hateful person nobody liked. But her talking points, her viewpoint has become more normalized and mainstream. So let's get straight into the video.
Yeah.
And would you say, are you the most controversial person in Britain?
No,
Who is
not
then?
at all. Oh, I have no idea, and I wouldn't be at all.
No, she's kind of tame now. I mean, again, her talking points have become normalized, and just people just say the insane stuff she says just casually now. It's just the far right has become normalized and just accepted. That's it. Yeah. You can talk about migrants as basically cockroaches or vermin. Just casually.
All interested to find out. I think it's a sort of idleness. Labels are typically an idle thing, but
So ironic coming from this woman.
calling someone controversial is particularly idle because it just allows you to say, well, what they're saying is mad, so I can ignore them. So it's very handy for someone on BBC to say, introducing the controversial Katie Hopkins, because already then they've distanced themselves. Already they've let the audience know you can disregard this bint because she's a nut job. And already they've cleansed themselves. And I find that very, very lazy. And I would routinely...
Of course you will, because that is convenient for you. You are definitely a controversial figure. Not so much anymore, but in times of relative sanity where you were considered a very hateful, divisive figure, now that just hate and division is just seen as like normal. And like there's so many people who just say the same stuff you do, the talking points. Of course you don't like being controversial, but you are. Most people don't share your values. You are a controversial figure.
call interviewers out on that by saying, that's just idleness. You invited me on here because you want the views. Here I am. Do you want me here or not? The other thing...
I would say when it...
Yeah, it's an interesting time. When you go back to 2014, like, she was an anomaly. People just didn't like her. They thought, why are they letting her on? But that was the beginning of this like clickbait kind of get attention and have controversial figures, have both sides. If you're going to talk about climate change, have someone talking about climate science and someone who denies it. And this kind of both sidesism that has kind of destroyed discourse, because people shouldn't take Katie Hopkins seriously. And it's the reason we have is why we're so divided and in the mess we are.
It comes from me. I know that I'm a very controversial figure in that sense as well.
You've been given the same label.
Yeah.
But I also think one of the beauties now of having been around for so long, 20 years in the public eye, 25 nearly, is I've stayed really consistent. So I've held a very authentic line that is my true path. And people have realised that, well, hold on, if she was just being controversial, let's say tomorrow I was a new face and I said, I'm getting the NHS to pay for my new tits. One of the things they say on Good Morning TV for a bit of rage. That lasts 5 seconds. People are outraged. Why would the NHS buy that woman new boobs? And then they go away. I haven't gone away. And that's been a really fun thing for me. And I take no pleasure today in watching Mail Online, Daily Mail shedding all of my ex-colleagues, The Sun shedding staff, fast. The BBC currently is non-viable as a business. It can't operate because it doesn't have funding. Yep. Sky News just folded. There's no pleasure in watching all of my old bosses fail, but it is interesting that I'm still going.
When you say there's no
fail, I mean, the Daily Mail does well. It's one of the most viewed websites, and although it's losing readership in the UK, it is the most read newspaper. Also, the BBC, there's problems with the BBC, but a lot of people get the news from the BBC. It's declining. Younger people don't. Older people are more likely. But the idea that, the mainstream media that she used to be a part of, now it's like, is she not thankful for her career of again, just shows you how radical she is. Even the mainstream media like The Sun, the Daily Mail, which are often very racist, even they think she goes too far. Even they are kind of think, okay, you've crossed the line here, Katie.
pleasure. How much do you mean that?
There's no pleasure because actually, I like the idea that there's lots of different news organisations. I like that Mail was out there doing their thing. The Sun. I met some, I worked for some good people during my time there, and their choice wasn't really to get rid of me. They just had no choice. So, but I think things are changing so fast now, and this new nimble, agile podcast, new media stuff. I know. Look at you in your swanky studio.
Swanky studio.
You're so posh and fancy.
It's lovely, isn't it?
It's very nice.
But with this sort of
you're like a grown-up. There's a plant.
There's a plant.
There's softer lighting.
I've come to realise after some time that the plant is real, and so we have to water.
Yeah, you can just have a podcast now and just have a fancy background and have the appearance of having truth, impartiality, or facts, and that's it. You can just say whatever you want. Whereas, there's massive criticisms of the mainstream media, and I think it's ironic that people talk about mainstream media. She was part of the mainstream media, which is kind of ironic. But at least with journalism, at least with the mainstream media, the BBC, the Guardian, there is fact checking, there is oversight, there is code of conduct. They have to retract mistakes or errors they print. Andrew Gold doesn't have to do any of that. He can just say whatever he wants, and he does. It doesn't have to be true. So yes, there's problems with the mainstream media, but I would trust the BBC and the Guardian over any rando on a podcast. Don't listen to me. Anything I say, fact check it. Do your own research, as it were, because people can just say whatever they want, and misinformation spreads so easily when you can just have a podcast, have a fancy background, say whatever you want, and people just say, oh, what they're saying is true. They don't fact check. And a lot of this happens with Donald Trump. Donald Trump will just say something, and people who like him will just say, oh yeah, that's it. They won't actually investigate what he says and compare it with what he does. And misinformation is the biggest fight we face. It really is. The fact that now people just think Tim Pool or Joe Rogan are somehow equivalent of journalism and fact checking and actual investigative journalism and finding the truth. People aren't concerned with the truth anymore, and that's a really dark place to be.
It. I thought it was fake, but that's the thing. Well, the reason I ask is because I do take. I wouldn't say I take no pleasure in some of those channels not doing well. And I don't have the personal relationships you do with those people, so I understand what you're saying. I take a tiny bit of pleasure in going, oh, so this kind of ideological drive you went on, this cowardly, contemptible drive you guys went on, isn't.
Again, they're always vague gesturing. They're never specific. What ideological drive? What for treating trans people well, or just not being racist, or What do they mean? Just vague.
Actually very good for views, and people don't trust you guys anymore.
Yeah.
Ooh, there he goes. It's not very good for views. That's all he's about. They're just grifters. What's the best for views? What's the most controversial thing you can be? Well, just be anti-Islam, anti-Muslim, anti-trans. That's all that matters to him and her. What's the most controversial position? Is it based on truth and facts? Well, no, but it gets clicks. We'll do the one that gets clicks then.
And I would say that exactly that. I'm not really taking pleasure in them failing, but I do take a great deal of pleasure in our side winning. And by that, I just mean ordinary.
But you're not, though. The ordinary person doesn't care about the culture wars. They're living their lives. Working class people aren't that political. They're kind of apolitical. They don't really care about it. They go, oh, they're all the same. And then younger people are a bit more diverse. There are people who will be on the right, but a lot of young women who are independent, they're kind of feminist, they're empowered, they're career driven. There's incels. People are complicated, and the idea that the right are winning, like Katie Hopkins, no, it's a very small amount of people who kind of like Katie Hopkins, Tommy Robinson, Jordan Peterson. Reform only got 4 million votes. If it was a mainstream thing, and it kind of is in a discourse, they are, getting, clicks, let's just say. But this isn't the majority of the British public. They don't like Katie Hopkins. They don't like Elon Musk. They don't like Donald Trump. They don't like Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage half the country hates. He's a very divisive figure. So objectively, they're not winning. They're not winning at all. And they know the UK is a progressive country. There's a lot of people who dislike the rhetoric of Katie Hopkins.
People using their own eyeballs to decide what they want to see, what they don't want to see, what they're interested in and what they're not. And I guess that would be applicable today with your podcast or anyone's, is, I very much say to viewers, if you don't want to listen or see, or it's just too awful for you to imagine me or any other guest, you see that little thing in your hand, there's a button on there, and it's a stop button. People own choice. We need to go back to owning all the things, owning risk. If I'm going to do this, it's on me. If I screw up, it's on me. We need to go back to owning risk, and we need to go back to owning choice. And that's what this really ultimate struggle is about, is the government trying to say, we'll do all of that for you, just come and live under us. Or us saying, no, we're individuals, sod off. And obviously I'm massively in the we're individuals, sod off. Yeah.
One of the things that you've been maybe reassessed for in recent years, and I think you're alluding to that. I know Tommy Robinson has been a little bit reassessed in recent years, is the issue with Islam in this country. That 10, 15 years, it's weird actually, 15 years ago, Stacey Dooley.
Be more specific, what issue with Islam? I mean, not to say it's not got its problems, but he's so vague, it's just like gesturing. He can't, it's frustrating.
Was able to make a BBC documentary that everybody's forgotten about, where she went around her town going, oh, look at all the Muslims, I can't believe it's a Muslim, and the Muslims going, you're dressed not well, you look like a slut, you called me that was going on. And now the BBC, not in a million. Then there was like a 10-year period of no, but back in that Stacey Dooley period.
But it's so ironic he says this, but he's anti-woke, anti-trans. Like, he probably shares more views with Muslims than the average Brit. Like, he is a reactionary. He doesn't like freedom of expression in terms of gender. So it's deeply ironic these people proclaim they share values, Western values. They're against liberalism. They don't like liberal values. So what the hell is he talking about? Again, incoherent.
There was like Obama was saying we're going to deport people, and Clinton's was saying we're going to deport everyone. Then there was this sort of 10-year period of like anyone who mentions immigration or those things is now a bigot. But is it sort of changing the last year?
God, he's just so loaded and just so vague in what he's saying. Like, no, immigration, we've been talking about immigration for at least 100 years, going back to the Jews. We've been talking about that. I mean, often it's the mainstream way. Like, the ruling class love using that as a means to kind of deflect from their behavior, their power, their wealth. So the idea that immigration, no, that's all the Daily Mail talk about, all the Express, the Daily Star, they love it. They've been talking about it for decades. So all of a sudden we're talking about immigration. No, you can talk about immigration, but don't talk about it in a racist way. It's very easy to not talk about it in a racist way and go, okay, let's talk about it. Let's not talk about us versus them. Like, oh, they're coming over here and changing the towns. Oh, they're coming over here. Like, no. If you believe in freedom, which you should, freedom of movement, you should extend that to other people. And they don't. Again, it's one value for them, one rule for them, and another rule for others.
Year or so.
Yeah, and that's a really strange thing to see is so Elon kind of came along and blew the roof off. So he kind of got a hand grenade and threw it into the pot, and it just detonated and just took the lid off everything and made it so that you could say this, oh my gosh. And all of a sudden, very typically...
Say what? What, neo-Nazi stuff? Racist stuff? Smears against Muslims? That's what he's done. He's pushed Twitter into a neo-Nazi cesspool. And, okay, freedom of speech, but not freedom from consequence, not freedom from criticism. And if you do say deeply racist things, people will call you out. But again, that they always equate freedom of speech with like freedom just to say whatever you want. And if people don't like it, that it's their problem. No, they have no. It's ironic they talk about accountability, like, oh, people should take accountable of their risks. She never does. She gets upset when people call her out. She's just such a hypocrite.
everybody and their son was out there saying, well, I was the one that was calling this out. I was the one. And you're like, were you? I didn't see you. And I'm producing headlines from 2014 where, The Guardian, Katie Hopkins arrested for suggesting grooming gangs are majority Pakistani Muslim men,
Which simply isn't true. Again, a lie that he doesn't push back on, because it just goes against their narrative. They have to demonize Muslims and Islam, and they don't look at the actual facts. And this is the environment now, the media environment, where you can just say a lie like this and people believe it. Just repeat a lie enough and it becomes truth.
Simon Dansuck, cuck, fuck, whatever, reporting me to Manchester police, me being arrested for saying it's majority Pakistani Muslim men who are part of these grooming gangs, me being arrested for even
Based on no evidence, just a feeling she has because she doesn't like brown people.
tweeting that 10 years ago, and now look at it. You cannot get enough boys coming out saying, I was the one calling this out. And so that's a glorious thing, because people are...
How is that glorious? Like spreading misinformation? Smearing people, just ignoring reality and facts. How is that glorious? It's not. We've been pushed to the right. 10 years ago, you were just considered a crank that nobody likes. But now, everybody loves grifters like Katie Hopkins. So many people, like Andrew Gold, so many people on the right who just say the same far-right talking points about, oh, Muslims, stop the boats, trans, woke. It's just so pathetic, and people actually believe this stuff, and you can't believe it if you've been educated. It always comes back to education. Like, the best inoculation to this stuff is just read a few books, just read a bit of history, read a bit of sociology, politics, philosophy. Just read. But obviously people don't really read anymore, and things are only going to get worse if you just take your information off podcasts like this. And a lot of people do. They don't critically engage with it and go, actually, is what she said about grooming gangs true? Maybe I'll look into that. They won't. They just take it for granted. Very dangerous.
Are speaking out. There's
Vindicated.
a decade. Well, it doesn't really matter for me, but a decade later, suddenly people are speaking. And personally, of course, for me, Elon Musk, did me a tremendous favour. So Rachel Riley, the Muslim Council of Britain, and the Centre for Countering Digital Hate Online, those three organisations walked into Twitter HQ, as it was, and had my account removed. And Elon Musk reinstated me and Tommy on the same day, Guy Fawkes Day.
She says that like they're anti-establishment. No, you wrote for the Daily Mail, The Sun. You are part of the establishment. Now you've moved off and you've got your own career and YouTube and stuff, but you are still part of the establishment. It's the same narrative that reinforces the establishment. You're not going against wealth. You're not going against the system. You're propping it up. It's people like you that maintain the status quo. You're not, questioning capitalism and inequality and the real pain that people are facing. You're just saying, oh, it's trans people and immigrants and Tommy Robinson's a freedom fighter. No, you have no idea how people live. She's a very wealthy woman. She's so detached from the average life of a British person. She's a grifter. And I'd be surprised if she even believes in any of this stuff. I'd be really surprised. She's probably just going like, oh God, how far can I push this? And then and they always play the victims. Like when Tommy Robinson gets arrested for his language, they always play the victim like, oh, they arrested me. Well, you are spreading hate. People don't need that in their lives. People want to just get on with their lives and not just blame all their problems on immigrants or trans or woke. People don't care about this stuff.
And that was, that was quite a moment for me, because that was blowing the lid off my world and saying that I'm now allowed to breathe again. And so it's proven to be true.
Gosh, what does it feel like when you're getting investigated by police? And were you arrested?
I've been arrested multiple times. I was arrested.
Hands in cuffs kind of thing.
They don't go for that. But there's things you learn about police and police approaching on your home or your life or your well-being or your family's well-being.
Such a victim mentality. Oh, But don't you took the risk. You need to take responsibility for your words, my dear. Like, again, such victim mentality. Like, oh, I should be able to say what I want without any consequences. And when I spread hate, lies, and misinformation, people come after me. Yes, that's how it kind of works. It works both ways.
Being the first time was a column in The Sun, which would be easy to find, but 2014, and it was Stop the Boats. 10 years ago. I mean,
Yeah.
who would have thought that 10 years later we'd still be saying the same thing?
Yeah, who would have thought if you were a person who's aware of these far-right talking points and how the Daily Mail have been saying this for years, even go back, again, over 100 years, Daily Mail supported Hitler. The fact that they are constantly demonizing the most poor and downtrodden people and blaming all the problems on the people at the bottom, not the people at the top. Yeah, who would have thought this? This is what they've been doing for decades. And it still works. People still buy into the lies here. When will people wake up? Genuinely, when will people realize, wait a minute, I'm being manipulated here? Deeply sad.
Stop the boats. And I said I'd use gunships to stop the boats. And what I meant by that was I would send the military to the channel. I would form a military barricade, if you will.
Yeah, because that's a normal thing. Again, the cowardice, like gunships. I'm sorry, you're saying the word gun. You are inherently implying a very dangerous and genocidal language. Like gunships. Why not say military? Again, that still evokes what you want to do. And there's a lot of people who talk in these terms of like, yes, they want to shoot these boats. We need to deal with it in a very violent way. And that's what she's implying. And she plays the victim. She's inherently or implying violence towards these people, and then she plays the victim. And they always do this, spread hate, and then when they get called out, she's like cry about it. You don't have it both ways. And also, the fact that she was arrested just shows you, like, this wasn't normal in 2014. Spreading this divisive rhetoric just shows you how far we've gone to the right and just how normalized this language is. It's not normal to talk about people like this. It's really not. We've not learned the lessons of the 20th century. If people like her can just say that and people go, yeah, that's common sense, isn't it?
And it was show me pictures of bodies floating in the water, show me children drowning, show me this. I have no sympathy. I would send the boats. And I would still believe that to this day. My first thing I would do is send the military to the channel. So
Bit of sympathy for children drowning.
More anger at the child traffickers, the human traffickers that decide to put children into boats.
Or the Tories that created the position where there's no safe routes and legal routes. Maybe go to the power, the people who created the problem. No, she won't do that because why would she? She makes money off this problem. That's all she cares about. She doesn't care about solving the problems. She doesn't care about people. She doesn't care about these people coming over and why they come over. Any of that context, irrelevant. Doesn't care. Not interested in facts. Only interested in hate.
I mean, it's disgusting. The onus doesn't really sit on me. It sits on the person that put them in a boat. And it sits on the charities that funded them to put them in the boat. And it sits on heads of religious organisations that also traffic human flesh, but best not go there. But my point rather being, I wrote a column in The Sun that said, stop the boats. I'd use gunships to stop the boats. That was my first big foray into the world of being arrested. So Major Crime and Homicide Command, the Metropolitan Police, arrested, interviewed under caution, my case sent to the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service, to see if they could prosecute me. The head of the UN Human Rights Organization saying that I was responsible for racism in Western Europe.
But she is. Figures like this, people like her, these grifters who spread this lies and misinformation about migrants, Muslims, they do cause racism. There's a reason why racism has gone up in the last 10 years. It's because of figures like Donald Trump, Farage, Katie Hopkins spreading this misinformation. Why is your life tough? Why are you not able to afford food? It's the immigrants. It's the same old story. People believe it. They don't they don't go, wait a minute, is this true? Well, no, they're spreading misinformation. They just eat it up. And it is easy to just have a very emotional. Like Hitler knew this. You repeat a message long enough based on hate. He's famously said, the only stable emotion is hate. And this is what she draws on. She's very aware of what she's doing. You play on people's emotions, and it's hard to argue somebody out of an emotional response and position because they got there through emotions. So you can't give them the evidence. You can't give them the facts because they just have a feeling. They just have a hatred. And us versus them dynamic. And she knows exactly what she's doing. She doesn't have empathy or sympathy for victims, and she doesn't want to solve the problem. She just wants to maintain it and get clicks and money from it. That's what it's about. She's just in it for the grift. And it's so sad that people buy into it.
I mean, it was very serious. And this kind of has gone away because it was 2014 and I was just me, a kind of columnist who was on The Apprentice, suddenly in a police station with 2 officers answering for a...
Again, you took the risk. You made the choice. Be responsible for your actions. They never are. It's pure victimhood. Fascism plays on victimhood. Like, oh, they're coming after us. It's pure, like it's a constant war against these people. And then when people call me out for my lies, it's like, oh, they're being mean to me. It's just so pathetic.
Column that I wrote, and it was one of those, I mean, many of your viewers won't even know, but at the time when you had to press play and record at the same time on a tape recorder, this is probably not something you relate to either. There used to be a thing called cassette recorders, and to get it to record you had to do play and record at the same time. That was in the police station to record my interview for a column in The Sun. I mean,
I like how she's talking about the experience, not what she actually said in the implication. Because if you said that about like Jews or gays, like you're going to put the military on them, or the right, or people like Katie Hopkins, there'd be outrage. Rightly so. But she can just say what she wants. She can like imply this violence and a deeply hateful view of people who are coming over on small boats. Legally, by the way, they're allowed under international law. But for her, it's like, oh, she's the victim. I got arrested for... Yes. When you call for violence, generally, there's a chance that you might get arrested. But she took the risk and she can't take accountability.
that's crazy.
Yeah, that is great. And then who do you arrest as well? Because then you have to arrest the editors. And...
Yeah, well, that's the interesting thing. No, the culpability sits with the columnist, even though
really?
you've gone through all of the...
Wow. Oh, culpability sits with the person who wrote the article. Wow. Just insane. Like, and she'd probably get mad by that. Like, why am I being culpable for what I said?
Layers of legal and editors.
Obviously, Katie was previously banned on X, but do people think speech should ever be banned? My wonderful sponsor, Ground News, I love these guys, I use them for all my news. They piece together articles from publications across the political spectrum, so you get access to every angle. Take a look at this article about the government implementing free speech laws at universities. Ground News shows 25 articles about this from a variety of publications. Lefty publication Pink News focus on hate speech concerns, whereas GB News, on the other side, write of cancel culture. I love this bias distribution tool, which shows this has been covered predominantly by the right, with only 21% of lefty publications covering it. And their factuality tool gives you an idea of how trustworthy each source is. Ground News is my only way to get unbiased news. Subscribe through ground.news/Andrew for 30% off unlimited access this month.
So it's been a long journey for 10 years or so of being arrested, interviewed under caution, completely annihilated, thrown out of my country. But I am
Oh, where's my little violin? Like, there's such victims. Like, take accountability for your words then. Actually think about what you're saying. Like, it's just, like Tommy wants, just victims. Victim mentality.
officially back.
How did it feel at your lowest? Do you get sad?
That's a really vacuous question.
Do you get upset?
That's also a vacuous question. It's just repeating the last one.
No. Well, it's a synonym, isn't it?
It's just a really, really
the reason
useless
people want to know
question.
is because John Ronson, for example, I think he wrote an article, I haven't seen it recently actually, suggesting you might be on the psychopathy spectrum. I ask people this a lot. It's not a dig on you. I ask people all the time if they're psychopaths. I ask Tommy Robinson.
No, I'm not concerned about who you ask what to. I'm saying asking me, do I get sad, is a really lame question.
I think people want to know how emotional and what it really feels like when someone tries to arrest you.
I don't think it's a question of being sad, but there is a great deal of sadness, of course. Being thrown out of your country is very sad. Watching ordinary British people be targeted and attacked and feel like they don't belong in their own country is incredibly sad.
What's that mean? You're just implying that like most people don't believe that. It's just a strange victim mentality. Like, oh, people, yeah, there's other people from all over the world that have come in this country, and it's okay. It's okay. Like, you don't always have to blame everything on immigrants and brown people. It's okay. It's okay.
Feeling like a second-class citizen in your own home is incredibly sad.
Based on what second-class? What, again, vague gesturing. Like, what does she mean by that? Like, second-class citizen. Yeah, workers are, but not because of immigrants, because at the top. But they don't talk about power. It's constantly bashing the people at the bottom. Like, yeah, it's the people at the bottom that cause all the problems, not the people who have all the wealth and the power. Just so pathetic. Like, and people actually believe. If you believe this, I'm sorry, you're just so cooked. Your brain it's just gone. You're just gone. It's so sad, and I feel for you. I feel sympathy for you. I feel empathy. But if you're an adult, you've got to just go beyond it and actually. What's she actually saying here, and what problem and what solutions is she offering? Because she isn't.
Working hard to give away 75% of your income is incredibly sad. You know, I think my position in all of this is not that relevant. It's the people that this is being done to that it's incredibly sad for. And whether I'm a psychopath or not, one of the things John Ronson found very hard was that, of course, we ended up really rather liking each other, hanging out for coffee. I don't want to disclose John's private life, but his children and my children, there are some similarities. And I'm an empathetic person. I'm not a monster.
Sorry, that happens
That's
sometimes.
Okay. Don't worry.
That was at the right moment, wasn't it? Yeah, I assume she is. She probably is interpersonally, probably an all right person. But she can't extend that empathy to people who don't look like her and walk like her and talk like her and squawk like her. And that's racism. It's that simple. Like, we are all humans. And John Ronson is probably a normal guy who will see the human side, but she won't extend that person. And it is very easy when you're talking to someone, be it a Muslim, a Jew, Christian, whatever, the ethnicity of race, religion, you do see the person. And it's actually exposure to different people, different cultures, different ethnicities, different religions that actually inoculates this racism. Just talk to people. Most people are basically the same. Like, they have the same values and they just want to live their lives. They just want to, have food on the table, just have their family be safe. But she can't extend this to other people. And that's really problematic because it's like dehumanization, and it's just normalization of this deeply reactionary and frankly fascistic view of people. It's us versus them. We're the good guys, they're the bad guys. And if we just get rid of the bad people, everything will be okay. Historically, this has not worked well for us. Oh, shit.
Position in all of this is not that relevant. It's the people. And whether I'm a psychopath or not, one of the things John Ronson found very hard was that, of course, we ended up really rather liking each other, hanging out for coffee. I don't want to disclose John's private life, but his children and my children, there are some similarities. And I'm an empathetic person. I'm not a monster.
Sorry, that happens
That's
sometimes.
Okay. Don't worry.
The irony of that.
I'll go back up about 10, 20 seconds. Is that
Okay.
good?
Do you remember where you were?
No, I'm a retard. I was born yesterday. I've never done an interview in my life. It's really, really hard to do this. So John Ronson, one of the things that was really frustrating for him is he couldn't find a route in to telling that I was actually not always a monster, or maybe I was a monster, but there was a different side. And at the time, my lovely husband, lovely Mark, worked at the donkey sanctuary, right? And he's a creative, so he does the branding for the donkeys. And John said, and this is surprising for John, he said, well, maybe, Katie, I've been thinking, we could go to the donkeys and do a picture of lovely Mark at the donkey sanctuary. And I knew what he was doing. He was trying via Lovely Mark and the donkey, which of course everybody would have loved. And Lovely Mark is lovely and fluffy and, you know, has a skeleton ring and has pierced earrings. And John was trying to indicate there was a different side to me. And I was like, John, if the Guardian readership needs to see a picture of a fluffy fucking donkey and my husband to like me, they can fuck off. And
Yeah, but John Ronson is trying to humanize you there and see that you are a human. And maybe if you could extend that to other people. But she's not even aware of that. She wouldn't even be aware of what, like, actually John Ronson is a thoughtful, empathetic guy and how we deal with these people and go, yeah, they are humans, but, and they probably interpersonally are probably just normal people. But what they represent and what they say is deeply hateful, divisive, often based on misinformation. But she doesn't get that. She doesn't get the fact that what she's saying is deeply hateful. She just doesn't understand what she's doing. And she really lacks self-awareness. Like, I think she probably does believe what she's saying, but, like, she just lacks empathy. That's it, really. Like, you can complicate it, but just lacks empathy for people who aren't like her.
That's my sort of favourite memory of my time with John, is that is the truth of me now, and this is I don't really care about the me bit or what people think of me, because I know me. I'm well past what people think. It's not that flippant, oh, I don't give a shit what people think. It's not that at all. It's not that. It's I am so determined about where I'm going and where we need to get to. And I have real clarity about what I'm going to do, that other people's views are much less relevant, other than the very ordinary person making stuff happen at the reception desk. So it's that.
I think, is that why you didn't...
Just a virtue signal. She doesn't care about the average person. She doesn't care. And the fact, again, she doesn't listen to criticism, I think says a lot. She doesn't care. It's all about the grift. It's all about the money. Stir us up as much controversy. She's on a tour. She's making her money. And that's all that matters. So that's it. That's her summed up. That's all it is. Rage bait, money. And if I create social division, more hatred, so be it. So on that depressing note, hit the like button, and I'll see you in the next video.